Good afternoon from beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. We are here at the Disaster Preparedness Conference. We thank NACCHO for letting us be a part of it. I'm Sam Bradley, your host for the Disaster Podcast, and I'm surrounded by lawyers, which is really scary. But these are special lawyers because they deal specifically with disaster preparedness topics, and I have Joseph Durham, Vanessa Burrows, and Tina Batra Hershey. So Vanessa, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you work for, and what you were talking about.
Sure, my name is Vanessa Burrows, as Sam mentioned, and I work for the City of Chicago Department of Public Health. I'm their attorney, and I'm also the HIPAA privacy officer for the City of Chicago. So yesterday I was speaking about privacy in emergency and disaster situations under HIPAA, and then as it might be under state laws as well.
Well, all of our EMS people that listen to the show know about HIPAA, the dreaded HIPAA, but she's going to talk about how it relates to disaster, which is a whole different subject. So, Tina.
Yes,
Tell us about yourself.
Tina Batra Hershey. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh Graduate School of Public Health. It's a mouthful. We like to refer to ourselves as Pitt Public Health. I teach health law and ethics in the Health Policy and Management Department there, and then I was speaking about a training program that I run that's funded by the CDC Public Health Law Program and ASTA, the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. It's designed to train judges around the country about their powers in an infectious disease emergency.
Very interesting. Joe.
Thank you. My name is Joe Durham. I'm in private practice with the law firm of Eastman & Smith, and I represent local health districts in the Association of Ohio Health Commissioners in Columbus, Ohio. And I was speaking on volunteer liability relating to a case study about a local health district signing up volunteers for the Medical Reserve Corps.
Well, being a Medical Reserve Corps member, I have some interest in that. And why don't we just start with you and talk a little bit about, give us some key points of what you were discussing.
Yeah, back in 2007, a client came and said that they wanted me to review an application for volunteers to sign up for the Medical Reserve Corps. I hadn't heard about the Medical Reserve Corps at that time, so I went and determined that yes, in fact, this local health district was the authorized coordinator, and then looked at the procedures in the state law about what is codified as to how you sign up a volunteer so that they have liability protections. And I spent 15 or 20 minutes pointing out some concerns I had with that system. So other participants in our seminar could go back to their states and just look at how they're doing that, and also be concerned about vetting the medical professionals that may be signing up and volunteer. I had one slide that indicated that there's doctors and nurses that are fake their credentials to go practice. So as local health departments and state health departments are signing up these volunteers, the message really is be careful, pay attention to detail, make sure you register them properly, because they're obviously doing a great thing, and if we want to provide them with the liability protections.
Yeah, and I know a little bit about what you're talking about because I worked for the state of California for a couple of years, and there are disasters where people want to self-deploy, which is one of the messages that we give out to our folks. That, you know, if you want to deploy as a responder, make sure you're attached to an organized team so you do have the legal protections and you do have, you know, you're covered if anything should happen to you. So many of the states have created, we call ours ESAR VIP, which is a very complex process, which you guys certainly know about, which is basically ability to register people and confirm that their licenses are up to date. So if they do need them, they have that body of people to go to that they know they are vetted and they are legal and they have licenses and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at a worst case scenario, if something happens and the entity gets sued, the volunteer is going to get sued. Does their medical malpractice coverage cover them, or are they relying solely on the statutory liability protections? And if so, we better have done everything correctly.
So this protects the responder as well as the agency who's responsible for them?
Yeah, the agency is usually going to have sovereign immunity or some statutory immunity, so they have to be acting within the scope of their service, and that's how that liability protection is afforded.
Good stuff to know. So Tina, you
Yes.
train judges. I find
train
that
judges.
fascinating. So what do you tell them?
So, as a little background, most judges don't understand their role in the public health system, and most public health people don't understand the role that judges play. And judges are important for two main reasons. They enforce the healthcare policies that boards of health and local health departments promulgate, and then they also act as that intermediary to balance individual rights and the public health. In our country, we take individual rights very seriously, and before we deprive someone of liberty, or by quarantining or isolating them or something like that, we have to we go through the court system to make sure that we're not trampling over those individual rights. And so that's where the judges come in. And so what our program does is give the judges the science background they need to understand infectious disease, because most judges don't have a science background. You don't have to take a lot of science to go to law school. And so judges don't understand the difference between a bacteria and a virus, or how an outbreak investigation is conducted, what an incubation period is, what an infectious period is. And so educating them about these scientific terms and how an outbreak investigation occurs lets them adjudicate the issues properly when something comes up. And of course, we hope that a mass pandemic event or mass casualty event won't occur, but if it does, the judges will be prepared to deal with any legal issues that arise in their court.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because when you think about contamination and the need to secure people, that is an issue with their personal rights. And
Yes.
I guess I've never really thought about it that way, because it's just something that's done. But what if they don't want to? So what do you do?
The judges think about due process issues all the time, but they don't think about it in the context of the science behind, how long do you need to quarantine or isolate someone because of the incubation period or the infectious period. And so by giving them that science background, they can, if they have to deprive someone of their liberty, they can do it appropriately and not for too long of a time or too short of a time. So what we do is we have part science, part law, and then we tie them together with case studies. So we go through 10 fact scenarios. What we've done is start with a very minor situation and then just ramp up until this crazy, hopefully never happening scenario, and just go through the science and legal issues that come up in the scenarios.
There's a lot of judges out there. I hope there's more of you doing that.
Well, I don't.
It's going to take you a long time to get around.
I think I'm the only one. So far, as I know,
good for you.
We've done 12 states, and we're working with the tribes as well. And so we did a tribal seminar in Arizona in 2012 and educated judges from 7 tribes there. And we have one coming up at the end of this month in the Pacific Northwest. And it looks like we're going to have about 18 tribes represented at that seminar.
Excellent.
So
thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
God.
I'm glad. I really like it. So
Vanessa, you talk about HIPAA and privacy in disaster situations, and boy, I can kind of relate to that, because in disaster everything seems to go wonky and you don't have the usual processes in place. How do we handle that?
Right, so it kind of depends on what the particular situation is. If there's a presidential declaration of an emergency or a disaster, and then the Secretary of Health and Human Services declares a public health emergency, then certain provisions of HIPAA can be waived under what's known as a Section 1135 waiver. But that only applies to a very limited jurisdiction and emergency period, and hospitals that have instituted a disaster protocol for within 72 hours. So it's kind of a limited waiver that can be issued in disaster situations such as Hurricane Sandy, but otherwise there are certain exceptions in HIPAA that allow for the disclosure of protected health information, which is basically individually identifiable health information in disaster or other emergency situations. So some of these, for example, would be notifications can be made to family members for the purposes of locating them, to tell them about their family member's condition or death, or if they've been transported to a particular hospital. Other notifications can be made to the Red Cross as a disaster relief organization. That's specifically allowed in the HIPAA regulations on privacy. And then there's other disclosures that can be made to law enforcement, or disclosures that can be made for public health purposes. It really kind of depends on the particular situation. Another disclosure that's permitted under the HIPAA privacy rule is one that occurs if there's a serious threat to public health or safety. So after the Newtown, Connecticut and Aurora, Colorado mass shootings, HHS issued additional guidance in the form of a letter to mental health providers and others, basically reminding them that disclosures can be made if there's a serious threat to someone's health or safety, whether it's a larger community or an individual, as long as the people who the disclosure is made to can do something about the threat, essentially, and the threat should be imminent, so those individuals can take appropriate action as needed.
Boy, I'm glad to hear about that one, because we're the ones in the field that have to deal with it when it happens and take care of all those people.
Right.
Well, I wish we had a lot more time to talk. I'm learning so much about what I don't know, so I appreciate what all of you are doing out there. So maybe you could give me a little information on where people may find more information about what it is you do, if there's a website or someplace they can go, Joe?
Actually, the beginning of my training, I talked about NACCHO has a training kit that's public health and the law, and 2 of the 5 components deal with volunteer liability and deployment and use of volunteers.
Very good. Well, NACCHO's wonderful with resources. We know about that.
Yeah.
Nice to know about that one. Tina?
So if states are interested in hosting this program, they can contact me directly, and I can give my email address. It's TBH, Tina Batra Hershey, 16 at pitt.edu. And we have funding for next year to do additional states, and I hope to continue as long as possible, and as long as the funding is there.
Excellent. And Vanessa?
I would recommend the HHS website, hhs.gov/OCR, which just stands for the Office of Civil Rights. They have a great frequently asked questions section. They also have specific sections on if you're a covered entity, such as a hospital or other healthcare provider, dealing with an emergency situation, some things that you can do to prepare, as well as general advice. So that'd be my top recommendation.
Boy, a lot of really good information from this group. Thank you so much for what you do. Boy, I wish we had more time. It just goes so fast. But there will be a lot more, so stay tuned. We'll be talking to you again from the Disaster Podcast. And as we say, disaster medicine is not your everyday medicine, but for the purposes of this forum, we'd like to say that disaster preparedness is everyone's responsibility.